If you're an out-of-state buyer looking at condos in Fort Lauderdale right now, there's a legislative reality that changed the condo market in 2023. And if your agent hasn't walked you through the details before you made your offer, you're exposed to a financial risk that blindsides many buyers in the market. In this video, we're covering what every out-of-state condo buyer must know about Fort Lauderdale in 2026. The post-Surfside legislation, the due diligence that's now non-negotiable, what reserve studies actually tell you, and how to spot buildings with problems before you're under contract. My name is McAleer. I've been selling real estate in Fort Lauderdale for 20 years, completed over 600 transactions, and I work with The Agency, one of the premier luxury brokerages in the country. Fort Lauderdale's condo market has always required diligence. What changed in 2023 is that skipping that diligence became dramatically more expensive. What you don't know before you close can cost you far more than the unit itself. Let's go through this carefully. On June 24th, 2021, the Champlain Towers South building in Surfside collapsed. 98 people unfortunately died. It remains one of the deadliest structural failures in history, and it fundamentally changed how condos are regulated here in Florida. The investigation found that known structural deterioration had been documented in engineering reports as early as 2018. The association deferred the repairs. The reserves weren't there to fund them. The collapse wasn't sudden. It was the end result of years of deferred maintenance made possible by a system that let condo associations underfund reserves indefinitely. Florida responded with Senate Bill 4D in 2022 and follow-up legislation in 2023. Buildings 3 stories or taller now face mandatory milestone structural inspections at 30 years and every 10 years after. They also must fund reserves based on a structural integrity reserve study. The ability to vote reserves away, what associations did routinely for decades, is now illegal. For buyers, the 2026 condo market is actively sorting itself into 2 groups: buildings that are compliant, funded, and structurally sound, and buildings that are not. The gap between those groups is measured in special assessments being levied right now. In some cases, $50,000 to $150,000 per unit. Knowing which group a building falls into before you go under contract is the most important financial diligence in any Florida condo purchase. Every buyer in the condo market gets the same instruction before putting in an offer, and that is to obtain and review 3 specific documents. These specific documents will tell you the financial health and structural stability more than anything else. The first is the Milestone Structural Inspection Report. Any buildings 30 years or older must have this. It tells you whether the building passed, whether a Phase 2 inspection was required due to structural concerns, and what repairs are needed. A clean Phase 1 report is the answer you want. A Phase 2 in progress or identified structural issues requiring remediation is a different situation entirely. If a seller or listing agent can't produce this documentation for a building that should have it, this is a red flag, not a paperwork gap. The second is a structural integrity reserve study. This tells you what the reserve fund needs to contain to cover anticipated repairs over a defined period, typically 10 years. It shows the required funding level, the current balance, and the gap between them. A building fully funded or close to it is doing things right. A building with required reserves of $3 million and an actual balance of $800,000 has a problem. That gap gets closed one way: through unit owners, through higher monthly fees, special assessments, or both. You need to know this number before you buy. The third is the special assessment history for the past 5 years, plus anything pending or anticipated. Some buildings have already levied assessments to close their reserve gap. Others have partial assessments with more coming. Others haven't finished their reserve study and don't know what they'll owe. You want all of this information before you close, not after. Your agent or attorney should be walking you through these documents during the inspection period. If they're not, ask for them directly. And really quickly, if you're moving to Fort Lauderdale, I've put together a great resource for you. It's called the Fort Lauderdale Homebuyer Guide. Inside, it has neighborhoods, price points, what to buy, what to consider, and how to move here without second guessing yourself. It's completely free, and I'd love for you to check it out. See the link in the description below. Here's a practical question that matters the most when buyers are searching for a condo here in Fort Lauderdale. How do you identify those buildings that have potential issues before you go under contract instead of finding out afterwards? The first signal is HOA fee movement. The building that was charging $1,400 per month 2 years ago and is now charging $2,800 has had a reserve funding event. That's not automatically disqualifying. A building raising fees to fund reserves properly is actually doing the right thing. But but you need to understand what drove the increase before you commit to carrying those costs. The second signal is a special assessment history. Special assessments are public record in Florida. A building that levied a $40,000 per unit assessment in the past 2 years has surfaced a funding issue and started addressing it. A building with an active assessment in process means you may be buying a unit that still carries an outstanding balance. Always confirm whether that balance transfers to you or gets settled by the seller at closing. The third signal is days on market at the building level. If multiple units in the same building are sitting while comparable buildings nearby are moving, the market is telling you something. Other buyers are doing the same due diligence you are and passing consistently. Find out why before you're the one who doesn't. The fourth signal is building age. Buildings constructed between 1970 and 1995 are the highest risk cohort for deferred maintenance and reserve funding problems. Not every building in that range is a problem. Some have been well maintained for decades, but that's where the risk is most concentrated and where your due diligence needs to be the most thorough. So I want to give you the true picture of where the Fort Lauderdale condo market sits after this. Buildings with clean structural reports, funded reserves, and transparent documentation are holding value and in some cases appreciating. Buyers who did the work, chose well-run buildings, and closed are in good positions. These buildings aren't experiencing the pricing pressure the broader condo market conversation suggests. Buildings with unresolved inspections, larger funding gaps, or pending assessments are under real price pressure. Units in these buildings are sitting longer and selling at discounts. For an informed buyer who prices the risk correctly, a unit in a building with a known $60,000 special assessment should trade $60,000 lower. This is a calculated opportunity. The problem is buying it without knowing. At the luxury level, buildings over $1.5 million per unit, the financial stakes are higher. A $3,000 monthly HOA that rises to $5,000 because of reserve funding requirements is a $24,000 per year change in carrying costs. Buyers at this level should be asking the right questions from day one, but only if their agent is prompting these questions before an offer is accepted, not after. Here's the framework that I use for buyers who are considering a condo here in 2026. Never waive your right to review condo documents during the inspection period. Florida law gives buyers the right to review all association documents and cancel based on what they find. This protection exists specifically for the situations the post-Surfside legislation is surfacing. An agent or seller pushing you to skip this review is not acting in your interest. Before you fall in love with a building, ask your agent what they know about its inspection status and reserve funding. An agent who has been active in this market knows which buildings have clean reports, which ones have issues, and which ones are still working through that process. That local knowledge is one of the most practical things an experienced agent provides. And if you find a building you love that has a known reserve issue or pending assessment, price it accordingly. A unit in a building with a $75,000 per unit special assessment is worth $75,000 less than an identical unit in a building without one. The market is starting to price this correctly. Make sure your offer reflects it too. And that wraps up this one. If you're serious about buying a condo here in Fort Lauderdale, all of my contact details are in the description below.